Have you ever felt the sting of being judged, dismissed, or humiliated simply because you didn't look the part? That crushing moment when someone decides your worth based on your appearance alone? Imagine standing in a luxurious resort lobby, feeling eyes scan your simple clothes with disappointment and disdain. Imagine the shame burning your cheeks as security guards escort you out like an unwelcome intruder, while other guests watch and whisper, all because you didn't arrive dripping in designer labels or step out of a limousine. This is exactly what happened to Elena Morales, a dedicated fourth-grade teacher whose only mistake was choosing comfort over status symbols when she arrived at the exclusive Serenity Bay Resort. What the judgmental staff couldn't possibly know was that this simple woman, in her hand-woven dress, was married to one of the wealthiest men in the world, a man whose response to his wife's humiliation would leave the entire resort speechless. What would you do if someone you loved was treated this way? Would you demand revenge, or find a way to teach a more powerful lesson? Join me for a story about dignity, assumptions, and the quiet power of true character that will make you question how we determine someone's value in our status-obsessed world. Hey there, beautiful souls. Welcome to Love Crib, your ultimate destination for all things romances, connection, and heartfelt stories. I'm thrilled to have you here, sharing this amazing journey of exploring love in all its beautiful, complex, and magical forms. Whether you're a hopeless romantic, someone searching for relationship insights, or just love diving into heartwarming content, you're exactly where you need to be. If you're enjoying what you see, I'd be incredibly grateful if you could hit that subscribe button to stay connected with our Love Crib community. Drop a like to show some love, support, and motivation. Share this video with someone who might need a little romance in their life. Your support means the world to me and helps us continue creating content that celebrates love, connection, and the beautiful stories that bring us together. Elena stood in the gleaming marble lobby of Serenity Bay Resort, her weathered canvas bag slung over one shoulder, feeling increasingly out of place among the designer luggage and polished guests. The receptionist's smile had faded the moment Elena approached the desk, replaced by a thin-lipped assessment that traveled from Elena's simple linen dress to her unbranded sandals. "I'm sorry, ma'am, but there seems to be some confusion. We don't have any reservation under your name," the receptionist said, not bothering to check the computer again. "There must be a mistake," Elena replied calmly, pulling out her confirmation email. "I booked the oceanfront suite 3 months ago. Here's the confirmation." The receptionist glanced at the email with obvious skepticism. This appears to be for a different resort. Serenity Bay is an exclusive establishment with a strict membership policy. Before Elena could respond, a man in an expensive suit appeared beside the receptionist. "Is there a problem here, Vanessa?" "Mr. Harrington, this woman claims to have a reservation, but she's clearly not on our guest list." The manager's eyes performed the same appraisal the receptionist had done moments before. "Ma'am, I believe there's been a misunderstanding. Our suites start at $5,000 per night. Perhaps you meant to book at Seaside and down the coast?" Elena felt heat rising to her cheeks, but her voice remained steady. "I'm quite aware of your rates, Mr. Harrington. My reservation was confirmed and paid for in advance. Have you ever experienced that moment when someone judges you solely based on your appearance? When someone looks at you and decides in an instant who you are and what you're worth? Share your experiences in the comments below. We've all been there, and your story might help someone feel less alone." "Security, please," Mr. Harrington called with dismissive wave. 2 men in dark suits materialized within seconds. "Please escort this woman off the property." "Gently," he added as an afterthought. Elena didn't resist as the security guards flanked her. She simply straightened her spine, lifted her chin, and walked out with quiet dignity that seemed to fill the space more completely than any display of outrage could have. Outside, the tropical sun beat down on the pristine driveway. One of the security guards, a younger man with kind eyes, mumbled an awkward apology as they reached the boundary of the property. "Just doing my job, ma'am. Would you like us to call you a taxi?" "No, thank you," Elena replied, pulling out her simple phone. "I can manage." As the guards retreated, Elena walked to a small public beach adjacent to the resort's private shores. She kicked off her sandals, letting her feet sink into the warm sand as she dialed a number she rarely used. "Alexander? It's me," she said when the call connected. "I think we need to adjust our anniversary plans." 5 years earlier, Elena Morales had been teaching elementary school in her small coastal hometown when she met Alexander Reed. He had come to donate computers to the local school, arriving without fanfare in a modest rental car, rather than a helicopter or luxury vehicle one might expect from a tech billionaire. Alexander had built his fortune creating security software, staying largely out of the public eye despite his company's global success. When he visited Elena's fourth-grade classroom, he was struck by her passionate teaching and the way she commanded respect without demanding it. What was meant to be a brief visit turned into an afternoon of helping with science projects and later, dinner at the town's only decent restaurant. They were an unlikely pair, the quiet billionaire who preferred coding to cocktail parties, and the dedicated teacher who lived in a small apartment filled with books and student artwork. But they connected on a level neither had experienced before, finding in each other a kindred appreciation for simplicity, integrity, and purpose. When they married a year later, Elena had one non-negotiable condition. She would continue teaching and living independently. She refused his money, his offers of a new house, even a suggestion to establish a foundation in her name. "I love you, Alexander," she had told him, "but I need to remain myself. The moment I start living your life instead of mine, we'll lose what makes us work." Alexander not only accepted this arrangement, he admired it. He maintained his penthouse in New York and his various properties worldwide, while Elena kept her apartment and her teaching position. They spent weekends together, holidays, and school breaks, alternating between his world and hers. When they traveled to his business events, Elena paid her own airfare, flying economy while he took his private jet. It raised eyebrows among his wealthy associates, but Alexander would simply smile and say, "My wife makes her own choices. That's why I married her." For their 5th anniversary, they had planned something special. Alexander would attend a business conference near Serenity Bay Resort, while Elena would enjoy a few days of luxury before he joined her. It was her one concession to let him book and pay for the resort stay, a gift she had finally agreed to accept. "Just 3 days," he had insisted. 3 days where you don't have to be the responsible one, where you can just relax and be pampered before I join you." Elena had relented with a smile. 3 days, but I'm bringing my own clothes and paying for any extras." Alexander had simply kissed her forehead. I wouldn't dare suggest otherwise. They had planned to reunite on her actual anniversary, when Alexander's yacht would arrive to take them on a week-long cruise. Another compromise, as Elena had agreed to the yacht, but insisted on helping plan their itinerary to include stops at educational sites and small communities where they could contribute meaningfully rather than just tourist destinations. This delicate balance had sustained their marriage through 5 years of media scrutiny and societal confusion. Neither cared what others thought of their arrangement. They had found what worked for them, built on mutual respect and a deep understanding of each other's values. The conversation had deteriorated quickly after that. Mr. Harrington had barely glanced at Elena's identification or the confirmation email before making his assessment. "Ms. Morales, if you were indeed Mr. Reed's wife, we would certainly know about it. Mr. Reed is a valued platinum member of our resort chain, and we're intimately familiar with his preferences and family details. We keep our relationship relatively private," Elena had explained. "If you could just call and confirm." "I'm afraid we can't disturb our elite members with these kinds of verification requests," Mr. Harrington had interrupted. "Mr. Reed is currently attending the Global Tech Summit and has specifically requested no disturbances." Elena had maintained her composure. "Then perhaps you could check with your corporate reservation system? The booking was made through your membership program." "I've checked thoroughly," Vanessa insisted, though her fingers hadn't touched the keyboard in minutes. "There is simply no reservation for an Elena Morales or Reed." Mr. Harrington had leaned closer, lowering his voice. "Look, it's not uncommon for us to encounter people claiming connections to our wealthy clients. No harm done if you leave quietly now." That's when Elena had finally understood. They thought she was an imposter, perhaps a gold digger or celebrity stalker trying to get close to Alexander. Her simple appearance, her lack of designer clothes or jewelry, had allowed them to dismiss her claim entirely. Could you check under confirmation number RSD 75829? Elena had tried one last time. Mr. Harrington's patience had visibly thinned. Ms. Morales, or whoever you are, I've been managing luxury properties for 15 years. I can assure you that the wives of billionaires don't arrive alone in local taxis wearing. His eyes had flicked dismissively to her dress, handcrafted attire. Now, please leave before we're forced to contact actual security. That's when he called the security guards, and Elena had been escorted out with as much dignity as she could muster. Elena stood now on the public beach, phone in hand, the warm breeze tangling her dark hair as she considered how much to tell Alexander about what had just happened. The confrontation had begun innocuously enough. She had arrived at Serenity Bay in a local taxi rather than a private car service, dressed in her usual simple attire, a hand-woven linen dress she'd bought from a local artisan in Guatemala during a volunteer teaching program last summer, comfortable sandals, and a modest canvas bag containing just the essentials. Her larger suitcase, equally understated, contained clothes chosen for comfort rather than status. When she first approached the reception desk, she noticed how the staff's eyes slid past her to the glamorous couple waiting behind her, as if automatically assuming they should be attended to first. Elena had waited patiently, observing the opulent lobby with its soaring ceilings and fresh orchid arrangements that were probably replaced daily. "May I help you?" the receptionist had finally asked, her tone suggesting she doubted Elena was in the right place. "Yes, I have a reservation under Elena Morales," she had replied with a warm smile. The receptionist, Vanessa, according to her name tag, had typed the name with visible skepticism. "I don't see any reservation under that name. Perhaps try Reed? Elena Reed." Although Elena had kept her maiden name professionally, Alexander sometimes made reservations under his surname. "Nothing under Reed either," Vanessa replied, more curtly now. "Are you certain you have the correct resort?" Elena had produced a confirmation email on her phone. "Yes, here it is. Oceanfront Suite, 3 nights, beginning today." Vanessa had glanced at the screen with barely concealed disdain. "This confirmation number doesn't match our format. Where did you book this reservation?" "My husband made the arrangements," Elena explained. "And your husband is—" Alexander Reed. The receptionist's eyebrows had risen slightly, but her expression remained dubious. "Alexander Reed, the tech entrepreneur?" "Yes, that's correct." A small, disbelieving smile crossed Vanessa's face. "I see. And you're claiming to be his wife." "I am his wife," Elena corrected gently. That's when Vanessa had signaled to her manager, Mr. Harrington, who approached with a practiced smile of someone accustomed to handling situations. Now, standing on the public beach, she wondered what Alexander would say when she told him. Their anniversary plans, so carefully arranged to accommodate both their preferences, were dissolving in the afternoon heat. "Elena, what's wrong?" Alexander's voice came through clearly despite the distance. Elena paced along the shoreline, watching the waves roll in as she debated how much to share. This was supposed to be a happy occasion, their anniversary celebration. Did she really want to taint it with this unpleasantness? "The reservation seems to have been misplaced," she said finally, choosing her words carefully. "There might be an issue with the room." A pause. "That's unusual. They confirmed everything twice. Are you at the resort now?" "Not exactly," Elena replied, watching as a group of resort guests in designer swimwear were served cocktails by attentive staff just yards away on the private beach. A velvet rope and 2 security guards marked the boundary between the public area where she stood and the manicured paradise beyond. "What do you mean, not exactly?" Alexander's voice sharpened slightly, his intuition telling him there was more to the story. Elena sighed, sitting down on the sand. She had always been truthful with Alexander. It was a foundation of their unconventional relationship. Starting now with half-truths felt wrong. "I was asked to leave," she admitted. "They didn't believe I was your wife. The manager escorted me out with security." The silence that followed was brief but loaded. When Alexander spoke again, his voice was carefully controlled. "Did you show them the confirmation? Your ID?" Yes, but they insisted there was no reservation under either of my names. Mr. Harrington, the manager, seemed convinced I was an imposter. What would you do in Elena's situation? Would you tell your partner everything and let them handle it? Or would you protect their feelings and find another solution? Comment below with what you do. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Another pause, longer this time. Elena could picture Alexander processing this information, his brilliant mind already calculating responses and potential outcomes. "I'm sorry, Elena," he said finally. "This is unacceptable." "It's fine," she replied automatically, though they both knew it wasn't. "I can find another hotel. We'll still have the yacht tomorrow." "No," Alexander said firmly. "This isn't about the room anymore. This is about how they treated you." Elena closed her eyes, feeling the warm sand between her toes. This was precisely why she'd hesitated to tell him the full story. Alexander was unfailingly reasonable, almost eerily calm in most situations. But disrespect toward those he cared about was the one thing that could break through a composed exterior. "Alexander, please don't make a scene," she said. "It's not worth it." "It's very much worth it," he countered. "Not because of who I am, but because of who you are. You deserve better treatment regardless of who your husband might be." Elena felt a complicated mix of emotions swirling inside her. Part of her appreciated his indignation on her behalf. Another part worried that his response might make things worse, drawing exactly the kind of attention they typically avoided in their relationship. "What are you planning to do?" she asked. "I'm going to correct this situation," he replied simply. "Where are you now?" "On the public beach next to the resort." "Stay there. Get something to eat if you're hungry. I'll handle this." Alexander. "Trust me, Elena," he said, his voice softening. "No scenes, no public confrontations. Just a correction of an error. I'll see you soon." After they hung up, Elena remained on the beach, watching the sun begin its gradual descent toward the horizon. She found a small cafe nearby and ordered a sandwich and iced tea, wondering what soon meant in Alexander's vocabulary and what form his correction would take. She knew her husband well enough to know he wouldn't shout or make threats. That wasn't his style. Alexander built billion-dollar security systems by anticipating problems and designing elegant solutions. He approached most of life's challenges the same way, methodically, thoroughly, and with a quiet efficiency that often went unnoticed until everything was already resolved. Whatever he was planning, it would be precise and effective. And despite her misgivings, Elena found herself curious to see what would happen next. Aboard his private jet, Alexander Reed ended the call with his wife and sat motionless for several moments, his expression unreadable to anyone who didn't know him well. His assistant, Marcus, who had worked with him for over a decade, recognized the subtle signs of his employer's rare anger. The slight tightening around his eyes, the almost imperceptible straightening of his already perfect posture. "Change of plans?" Marcus asked, already reaching for his tablet. "Yes," Alexander replied, his voice calm but carrying an undercurrent of steel. "Contact the captain of the Artemis. Tell him to proceed immediately to Serenity Bay instead of tomorrow morning. Full speed." Marcus raised an eyebrow, but quickly made the call. Alexander's 300-foot yacht, the Artemis, was one of the most advanced private vessels in the world, equipped with state-of-the-art technology and capable of impressive speeds when necessary. "And the resort?" Marcus asked after confirming the yacht's new orders. "Get me everything you can on Serenity Bay Resort. Ownership structure, management hierarchy, customer satisfaction metrics, social media presence. And I need the direct number for the regional director. The regional director might not be available on short notice." "They'll take my call," Alexander stated simply, not from arrogance, but from a pragmatic understanding of how the world worked. "Also, contact our legal team and have them review our membership agreement with the Celestial Resort Group." While Marcus worked, Alexander made a series of calls himself. He didn't raise his voice once, didn't issue threats or demand special treatment. He simply stated facts, asked focused questions, and made reasonable requests that somehow carried the weight of commands. By the time the jet landed at the small private airport 20 minutes from Serenity Bay, Alexander had a complete understanding of the resort's operations and a precise plan for addressing the situation. The Artemis, cutting through the water at maximum speed, would arrive within 2 hours. "Your car is waiting, sir," Marcus informed him as they deplaned. "Will you be heading directly to the resort?" "Not yet," Alexander replied. "First, I need to pick up my wife." The sleek black car with tinted windows took Alexander to the public beach where Elena waited. She was sitting at a small cafe table, watching the waves with a thoughtful expression. She hadn't changed, still wearing the simple linen dress that had apparently marked her as unworthy of the resort's attention. But at Alexander, she had never looked more regal. "Hello, troublemaker," he said with a gentle smile as he approached. Elena looked up, her face brightening despite the circumstances. "I thought you were at your conference." "Some things are more important," he replied, bending to kiss her cheek before taking the seat opposite her. "I'm sorry this happened." "It's not your fault," she said, then tilted her head slightly. "What exactly are you planning, Alexander? You have that look." "What look?" "The one you get when you're executing one of your perfect solutions." Alexander smiled, taking her hand across the table. "Nothing dramatic, just ensuring that everyone involved understands the error that was made today." Alexander. "No public scenes," he promised. "No embarrassing confrontations. Just a clear message about respect and assumptions." Elena studied him for a moment, then nodded slowly. "All right, I trust you." "Good," he replied, standing and offering his hand. "Because I believe that's our transportation arriving now." Elena turned to look out at the bay, where the unmistakable silhouette of the Artemis was appearing on the horizon. Even at this distance, the yacht's size and elegance were apparent, a floating masterpiece of engineering and design that normally wouldn't arrive until tomorrow. "You brought the yacht early," she observed, a hint of amusement in her voice. "Subtle. I thought we might as well start our anniversary celebration now," Alexander replied innocently. "Unless you prefer to find alternative accommodations for tonight." Elena laughed despite herself. "You're impossible." "I prefer resourceful," he countered with a smile. "Shall we?" As they walked toward the marina where the Artemis would dock, Elena slipped her arm through his. "Just promise me one thing. Whatever you're planning, make sure it teaches the right lesson." Alexander looked down at her, his expression softening. "And what lesson would that be, Professor Morales?" "That everyone deserves respect, regardless of what they're wearing or how they arrive," she said firmly. "Not that they should fear offending the rich and powerful." "That," Alexander promised, "is precisely the lesson I intend to deliver." The Artemis approached the Serenity Bay Marina with quiet precision, its massive presence commanding attention without needing to announce itself. At 300 feet long, with its sleek design and distinctive blue hull, it was impossible to miss, especially in a location where even the luxury yachts rarely exceeded 100 feet. On the resort's private beach and poolside terraces, conversations gradually fell silent as guests noticed the vessel's approach. Smartphones emerged from designer bags as people snapped photos, wondering aloud whose yacht it might be. In the resort lobby, Manager Harrington was dealing with a minor crisis involving a celebrity guest's specific pillow requirements when his assistant approached with an unusually anxious expression. "Sir, there's a situation developing at the marina," she said quietly. "Whatever it is, handle it," Harrington replied dismissively. "I'm in the middle of something important." "I think you'll want to see this personally," she insisted, showing him her tablet with a live feed from a marina security camera. "The Artemis just docked." Harrington's expression changed instantly. "Alexander Reed's yacht? He's not scheduled to arrive until tomorrow." "Yes, sir, and he's already disembarked with a guest." The security feed showed Alexander Reed walking along the marina's private dock, accompanied by a woman in a simple linen dress. The same woman Harrington had escorted off the property hours earlier. "Get the regional director on the phone immediately," Harrington ordered, straightening his tie nervously, "and have the executive chef report to my office. We need to prepare a special welcome." But it was already too late for damage control. By the time Harrington reached the marina entrance, Alexander and Elena were already walking up the path toward the main resort building, accompanied by the yacht's captain and first officer in sharp white uniforms. "Mr. Reed." Harrington called, hurrying forward with an ingratiating smile. "What unexpected pleasure. We weren't expecting you until tomorrow." Alexander stopped, his expression pleasant but unreadable. "Mr. Harrington, I believe we haven't formally met." "Indeed, sir. David Harrington, resort manager," he replied, extending his hand. "It's an honor to welcome you to Serenity Bay." Alexander took the offered hand briefly. "Thank you. I believe you've already met my wife, Elena." Harrington's practiced smile faltered as he turned to Elena, recognition and horror dawning simultaneously in his eyes. "Mrs. Reed. I. Ms. Morales. Actually," Elena corrected gently, "I keep my maiden name." Of course," Harrington stammered. "There seems to have been a terrible misunderstanding earlier. If you'll allow me to personally escort you to your suite." "That won't be necessary," Alexander interrupted smoothly. "We'll be staying aboard the Artemis tonight." By now, a small crowd had gathered. Resort staff, curious guests, and several members of the resort's management team who had rushed down upon hearing of Alexander Reed's unexpected arrival. Among them was Vanessa from the reception desk, who was trying desperately to blend into the background. Mr. Reed, a distinguished older man, said, pushing forward, "I'm James Langford, Regional Director for Celestial Resort Group. I just received word of your arrival. Please accept our most sincere apologies for any confusion regarding your wife's reservation. I assure you, disciplinary measures will be taken immediately." Alexander raised a hand slightly. "Before we discuss that, I'd like to clarify something important. My wife doesn't require special treatment because she's married to me. She deserves the same respect you'd show any guest arriving at your resort." The director nodded rapidly. "Absolutely, sir. Our failure today was inexcusable regardless of who." "Then perhaps," Alexander continued, his voice still pleasant but carrying effortlessly to everyone present, "you might consider examining your staff's tendency to judge guests based on their appearance rather than the confirmed reservations." A hush fell over the assembled crowd. Several staff members glanced uncomfortably at their shoes. "Ms. Morales arrived today with a confirmed reservation that your staff refused to honor," Alexander continued. "She was publicly humiliated and escorted off the property like an intruder, not because of any actual verification of her identity, but because she arrived in a taxi wearing clothes that didn't meet Mr. Harrington's expectations for someone staying in an oceanfront suite." The regional director turned a furious gaze toward Harrington, who had gone pale. "Mr. Reed, I can assure you," Harrington began desperately. "I'm not interested in assurances," Alexander replied calmly. "I'm interested in actions. My wife and I will be staying on our yacht tonight, as I mentioned. Tomorrow, I would like to meet with you, Mr. Langford, to discuss some changes to staff training that I believe would benefit both your organization and your guests." Langford nodded quickly. "Of course, sir. Any time that's convenient for you." 9 o'clock, then," Alexander said with a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. "And Mr. Langford, I'd like all staff involved in today's incident to be present for that meeting, not for punishment, but for education." With that, Alexander offered his arm to Elena, and they turned to walk back toward the marina, leaving behind a mortified resort staff and a crowd of whispering guests. As they walked, Elena leaned close to her husband. "That was quite a statement," she murmured. "Too much?" he asked, actually concerned about her opinion. "No," she replied thoughtfully. "It was exactly enough." Back at the resort entrance, Vanessa approached Mr. Harrington with trepidation. "Sir, should I prepare the oceanfront suite in case they change their minds?" Harrington stared after the retreating couple, his career flashing before his eyes. "Prepare the presidential suite," he ordered, "and then start updating your resume." Aboard the Artemis that evening, Elena and Alexander sat on the upper deck, watching the sunset paint the sky in brilliant oranges and pinks. A small table had been set for dinner, with candles flickering in the gentle breeze. "This isn't exactly how I planned to start our anniversary celebration," Alexander said, pouring Elena a glass of wine. "No," she agreed with a small smile, "but it's memorable." "I'm sorry you had to experience that," he said more seriously. "It was exactly what you've always tried to avoid by maintaining your independence. Elena considered this as she sipped her wine. Yes and no. What happened today wasn't about being your wife or not being your wife. It was about something more fundamental. The way people assess value based on appearance, Alexander suggested. Exactly, Elena nodded. As a teacher, I see it constantly. How children are categorized and treated differently based on their clothes, their lunch boxes, their parents' cars. By fourth grade, most kids already know exactly where they stand in the social hierarchy based on these external markers. Alexander watched her face as she spoke, admiring as always her passion for issues of real substance. What struck me most today, she continued, wasn't that they didn't believe I was your wife. It was the underlying assumption that I couldn't possibly belong in their resort on my own merits, that the only way someone like me could access that level of luxury was through connection to someone wealthy. And yet, Alexander observed quietly, that's precisely what happened. You called me, and I arrived with my very large yacht to set things right. Elena smiled at his self-awareness. True, but you know what I appreciated about your response? You didn't storm in demanding special treatment for your wife. You pointed out that everyone deserves basic respect and dignity. Alexander reached across the table for her hand. I learned that from you, you know. Before we met, I probably would have bought the resort and fired everyone involved. Could you actually have done that? Elena asked, genuinely curious. Probably not in an afternoon, he admitted with a smile. But I certainly would have tried. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, watching as the first stars appeared in the darkening sky. You think anything will change after tomorrow's meeting? Elena asked eventually. I hope so, Alexander replied. Not just at this resort, but perhaps more broadly. What do you mean? I've been thinking about establishing a foundation, he explained. Not the one I suggested before with your name on it. He added quickly, seeing her expression. Something focused on economic dignity and breaking down the barriers between social classes. Elena looked intrigued. What would it do specifically? Training programs, for one thing. Helping service industry workers recognize and overcome unconscious bias. Scholarship programs for promising students from underprivileged backgrounds. Maybe even a certification program for businesses that demonstrate true equity in customer service. That sounds meaningful, Elena said thoughtfully. But why now? Alexander's expression grew more serious. Because what happened to you today happens to thousands of people every day. Most of them don't have a billionaire spouse who can arrive on a yacht to make a point. Their dignity is violated, their humanity diminished, and no one ever corrects the situation. Elena studied him, seeing the genuine conviction in his eyes. You really care about this? I do, he affirmed. And I think we could make a difference together. You understand the human side, the educational component. I understand the business side, how to create incentives for institutional change. Partners in more ways than one, Elena mused. Only if you want to be, Alexander assured her. Your independence remains non-negotiable. I would never presume. Alexander, she interrupted with a warm smile, I think it's a wonderful idea. Not because it's your project that I'm joining, but because it would truly be ours from the beginning. Something we build together that reflects both our values. The relief and joy on his face made her heart swell. This man, who could buy almost anything in the world, valued her partnership above all else. To new beginnings, he said, raising his glass. And 5 extraordinary years, she added, touching her glass to his. As night fell completely, the lights of Serenity Bay Resort twinkled along the shoreline. From their vantage point on the yacht, it looked like a postcard of luxury and exclusivity. But now, both Elaine and Alexander saw it differently. Not just as a paradise for the privileged, but as a symbol of how much work remained to be done in creating a world where dignity was universal rather than purchased. Tomorrow's meeting, Elena said suddenly, I'd like to attend. Alexander looked surprised. Are you sure? It might be uncomfortable. Yes, she replied with quiet certainty. Not for revenge or to make anyone feel worse, but because I think my perspective might be valuable, both to the staff and to the foundation we're going to build. Alexander smiled, recognizing once again the quiet strength that had first drawn him to her. Then we'll face it together. The meeting the next morning took place in the resort's largest conference room. The space, normally used for corporate retreats and luxury weddings, had been hastily repurposed. The regional director had arranged chairs in a semicircle rather than the typical boardroom configuration, creating an atmosphere more conducive to conversation than confrontation. When Alexander and Elena entered precisely at 9 o'clock, they found the room already occupied by about 20 staff members, including Mr. Harrington, Vanessa, the security guards who had escorted Elena out, and various other employees involved in the previous day's incident. The regional director, James Langford, rose immediately to greet them. "Mr. Reed, Ms. Morales, thank you for coming," he said, extending his hand to each of them in turn. "We're all eager to learn from yesterday's unfortunate events." Elena noticed the nervous expressions on many of the staff members' faces. Some couldn't meet her eyes. Others seemed braced for a public reprimand or worse. She felt a surge of compassion. These were people with jobs to protect, likely with families to support. Their mistakes, while hurtful, didn't define them entirely. "Thank you for arranging this meeting," Alexander said to Langford as he and Elena took their seats at the front of the room. "Before we begin, I want to make one thing clear. This isn't about punishment or humiliation. We're here to discuss something more important than a single incident." A visible wave of relief passed through the room, shoulders relaxing slightly, breath being released. "Yesterday," Alexander continued, "my wife arrived at this resort with confirmed reservation. She was dismissed based solely on appearances and assumptions. I'd like to hear, in your own words, what happened from the perspective of those involved." There was an uncomfortable silence until Vanessa, the receptionist, hesitantly raised her hand. I was the first person Ms. Morales spoke with," she admitted, her voice shaking slightly. "When she approached the desk, I immediately made assumptions based on how she was dressed and that she arrived in a local taxi." "And what assumptions were those?" Alexander prompted gently. Vanessa swallowed hard. "That she couldn't possibly be a guest here, especially not in one of our premium suites." She looked directly at Elena for the first time. "I didn't even properly check our reservation system. I just decided you didn't belong." Mr. Harrington spoke next, his professional demeanor subdued. "I compounded the error by accepting Vanessa's assessment without verification. I saw a woman in simple clothes, without designer labels or visible jewelry, and I concluded she must be attempting to access amenities she hadn't paid for. I've been in this industry for 15 years, and I've never been more ashamed of my conduct." The younger security guard who had apologized to Elena cleared his throat. "I knew something was wrong as soon as we escorted you out, ma'am. You were too calm, too dignified. But I didn't speak up, and I should have." Elena leaned forward, addressing the room. "May I say something?" Alexander nodded, giving her the floor. "What happened yesterday hurt me," she began candidly. "Not because I'm Alexander Reed's wife, but because I'm a human being who deserves basic respect. In my classroom, I teach children that character matters more than possessions, that how we treat others defines us more than what we own. Yesterday showed me how far we still have to go as a society in truly embracing those values." She paused, looking around the room. "But I don't believe any of you are inherently unkind or deliberately elitist. I think you're operating a system that has trained you to equate worth with wealth, to see designer labels as membership cards to exclusive spaces." The room was completely silent now, every person hanging on her words. "I'm a teacher by profession and by calling," Elena continued, "and I believe that most problems in our world can be addressed through education and understanding. That's why I wanted to be here today, not to see anyone punished, but to be part of changing the narrative." Alexander took over smoothly. "Which brings me to the reason I asked for this meeting. Ms. Langford, Celestial Resort Group prides itself on exceptional service. But true hospitality means welcoming every guest with equal dignity, regardless of appearance." "Absolutely, Mr. Reed," Langford agreed fervently. "We're already reviewing our training protocols." "I'd like to help with that," Alexander interrupted. "My wife and I are establishing a foundation focused on economic dignity and breaking down social barriers. We'd like Serenity Bay to be our first partner in developing a new training program for luxury service providers." Langford's expression shifted from damage control to genuine interest. What kind of program? One that helps staff recognize unconscious bias and provides practical tools for more equitable customer service, Elena explained. Not just sensitivity training, but real-world scenarios and solutions. We cover all development costs, Alexander added, and work with your team to create something that could eventually become an industry standard. The regional director looked thoughtful, and in return, you implement the program across all Celestial properties and share the results, good and bad, to help us refine the approach, Alexander replied. Then, if successful, you help us introduce it to other luxury brands. Essentially, Elena added, you turn yesterday's mistake into tomorrow's industry-leading practice. There was a murmur among the staff as they processed this unexpected turn. Instead of legal threats or demands for terminations, they were being offered a chance to participate in something constructive. Vanessa raised her hand again. I'd like to volunteer to help develop the program, if that's possible. Yesterday taught me how much I need to learn. Me too, said the young security guard. One by one, nearly every staff member in the room indicated their willingness to participate. Mr. Harrington, who had remained silent during this exchange, finally spoke up. Mr. Reed, Ms. Morales, I served in the military before entering hospitality. We had a saying, mission first, people always. Yesterday I failed at both. I'd like to be part of making this right, not just for you, but for every guest who walks through our doors. Alexander and Elena exchanged a glance, a silent communication passing between them. We'd welcome your participation, Mr. Harrington, Elena said with genuine warmth. Sometimes those who've made mistakes have the clearest vision for preventing them in the future. As the meeting concluded with practical next steps and contact information being exchanged, Elena felt a sense of rightness that hadn't been present the day before. What had begun as an unpleasant incident had transformed into an opportunity to effect real change. Outside the conference room, as they walked back toward the marina where the Artemis waited, Alexander took her hand. How do you feel? He asked. Good, Elena replied, considering the question seriously. Better than if they'd simply upgraded us to the presidential suite or offered free champagne. Alexander smiled, although Langford did offer that as well. Which you declined, she noted appreciatively. I figure we have better champagne on the yacht anyway, he said with a wink. So, Professor Morales, are you ready to begin our actual anniversary celebration now? 5 years deserve something special. Elena squeezed his hand, thinking about their journey together. The brilliant billionaire and the dedicated teacher who had built a relationship on mutual respect and shared values despite their different worlds. I think we've already started celebrating in the most appropriate way possible, she said thoughtfully. By recommitting to what makes our marriage work, seeing the value in each other that goes beyond surface appearances. Alexander stopped walking and pulled her gently into his arms. There on the path with resort guests passing by. Have I told you recently that marrying you is the smartest decision I ever made? Elena pretended to consider this. Not since yesterday morning. Clearly an oversight I need to correct, he murmured before kissing her softly. As they continued toward the yacht, Elena reflected on the past 24 hours. The humiliation of being escorted from the resort seemed distant now, overshadowed by the positive outcome they had engineered together. It was a reminder that dignity wasn't something bestowed by others or purchased with wealth. It was inherent, inalienable, and worth defending not just for oneself, but for everyone. This story reminds us that respecting everyone regardless of appearance is essential. True worth isn't found in designer clothes or luxury yachts, but in how we treat each other. If you believe in treating all people with dignity, hit that like button and subscribe for more powerful stories like this one. Let me know in the comments. Have you ever been judged unfairly based on your appearance? How did you handle it? Your story might inspire others facing similar situations.